So this story starts with a marriage between a king and a beautiful princess. But unfortunately, I cannot say, and they lived happily ever after, because the queen, she was not happy at all. Because soon after marriage, she discovered that the king, oh, he was not at all in love with her. He was just in love with her beauty. And that's why he liked to watch her bathe in the pool that was in the castle's garden, just to admire her body, her perfect shapes. But after a while, he got bored of that too, and he lost any interest in the queen. And so he started to spend his nights with other women. And that really broke the queen's heart, so that she locked herself in her room and never went out again. And she spent her days watching what happened in the garden from behind her windows. And the king, do you think that he cared? Not at all. Because the truth is that he just cared for himself. Every morning he spent hours and hours looking at himself in the mirror, and he thought, to be as handsome as a Greek god. Until one morning, a loud scream was heard coming from his bedroom. Oh, oh. The king was staring terrified at the mirror, holding in his hand a white hair. And so for the first time, he felt on his neck the breath of death. Oh no, I cannot get out. I cannot die. What can I do? Alas, the sage, I certainly have a solution. And so he summoned the sage, and the old sage said, well, Your Majesty, the solution is closer than you might think, because in your garden, close to the pool, there is a magic rose bush whose flowers can give immortality to the master of the garden. Really? But that's it then. Gardener, gardener. Here you are, gardener. I want you to make the rose bush close to the pool bloom, and do it now. Otherwise, I will chop off your head. But Your Majesty, that rose bush has never bloomed. I don't know if we will be able to. But you are a gardener, aren't you? If you are not able to make a stupid plant bloom, then you deserve nothing but death. But actually, that gardener's head was just the first of a long series of heads that were chopped off, because all the gardeners that followed, they all failed. And with every head that was chopped off, new white hair appeared on the king's head. And so, as you can imagine, it was no surprise that, despite the lavish reward being offered by the king, nobody applied to become the new royal gardener. Nobody, except one man. He was quite young and had fine features and a gentle look, but, well, he looked more like a beggar, because he was wearing old clothes and worn-out shoes. And when the king saw him, he said, "You, a gardener? What do you know about gardens?" "Oh, Your Majesty, I know that gardens require just two things, care and patience. And so I'm asking you is to live in the garden and you're patient for 3 springs." Now, the king was actually very skeptical, but he was also very desperate, because now his hair was almost completely white. And so he said, "Well, fair enough then. We have a deal. But if you fail, you know what will happen." And so from the day on, the young gardener lived only for the rose bush. So he tenderly dug the earth around its root. He watered it drip by drip. He also created a special fertilizer, and he mulched it for winter, and he pruned it after the frost, and he stayed by his side night and day, sleeping with one eye open, like a lover watching the heartbeat of his sleeping beauty. And as a sleeping beauty, in an early spring day, kissed by a ray of the rising sun, one rosebud sprouted. "Oh, sweet little bud, you are so beautiful, and I'm so happy. I will immediately go and tell the king the news." And when the king heard the news, he was on cloud 9. "Here I am, immortality, here I am. Gardener, you have saved my life, but also yours. And when the gardener went back to the rose bush, he was so exhausted that he fell asleep. And when he woke up, but where is the bud? Where is the bud? And he looked around but couldn't find any clue. And when he informed the king, oh, the king got mad. What? What? How is that possible? A bud has no legs. Or maybe there was no bud at all. It was just a lie. Be careful, gardener, because if it wasn't for the promise I made you would be already dead. So now go away and don't come back until you have that rose. But the gardener, he was really puzzled. He could not understand what could have happened, and so he started to doubt of himself. Maybe I haven't cared enough. Maybe I haven't strived enough. And so he started to do again what he had done before. So he dug the earth around the rose bush, he fertilized it and watered it, and he mulched it and pruned it after winter. And again he stayed by his side night and day, but this time sleeping with both eyes open and with his bow and arrows by his side, ready to defend the rose bush from any attack. And then again, in an early spring day, yes, I already know what happened. A rose bud sprouted. Oh, my sweet little bud. Oh, don't worry. This time I won't leave you unattended. But there's a servant. Hey, please, tell the king that the rose bush has sprouted. But what is the bud? Where is the bud? And there he saw it. A big worm that was swallowing his entire bud and then quickly disappeared into the earth. Oh no, my sweet little bud. And the king now will get furious. And the king did got furious. What? What are you cheating your word, gardener? Be careful, because if it wasn't for that promise, get out of here, get out of here. But this time the gardener knew his enemy, and he knew what he had to do. And so he started the process all over again. And when again, in an early spring day, one rose bud sprouted. He didn't move and waited. And as soon as the big worm came out of the earth, here you are. This time you won't swallow my little bud. But the gardener was also too kind to kill the worm, and so he just threw it far away and sent a servant to call the king. And when he turned towards the rose bush, a white rose blossomed before his eyes, and it was so beautiful and so elegant. It had velvety petals and such a delicate fragrance. And then he heard some footsteps, and when he looked up, he saw her, the queen, who had slipped out for herself and was walking towards the pool for the first time after a very long time. If it wasn't for the crown, she would look like a fairy. She had long blonde hair and shining green eyes and the velvety pale skin. And she was wearing a long white dress. And when she walked past the gardener, he was sure that he smelled the same fragrance of the magic rose. And then she took off her clothes and plunged into the pool. And the gardener could not take his eyes off her. And he was so enraptured by her beauty that he didn't hear the king coming. Hey, you gardener, what are you doing down there? How do you dare to look at my wife? But now that I've got my rose, there's nothing that can stop me from killing you. And so he unsheathed his sword and started to run towards the gardener. But his cloak got tangled up into a rose bush, and so he stumbled and fell onto his own sword that stabbed him to death. The king was now lying on the ground in a pool of blood. And when he turned his head, he could see the Rose of Immortality close to his face. After all, it was just a legend then. The master of the garden died, like everyone else. And then he saw the feet of the queen approaching, And when she was there, she bent down and whispered in his ear, "No, Your Majesty, because the real master of the garden is not you, but the one who watched and cared and still watches." And then she closed the king's eyelids and she picked the rose and offered it to the gardener. "You said that the garden requires care and patience, but isn't that also true for a happy marriage?" And now, my friends, I leave you to ponder what is in your life that requires care and patience.